Hi guys, welcome back to Sunray Art. On this channel, we create paintings and drawings together. I put out a new video every week, so please don't forget to like and subscribe. Today we are going to be painting, and what we are going to be painting is roses. So I did a little sketch so we know where we're going. I'm going to pull it up here, but we're going to be using a technique called one stroke painting, where you use one brush stroke at a time to create these flowers. So let's take a look at this sketch. As you can see, we have two large roses, and those large roses are surrounded by some smaller blooms and smaller buds, as well as some leaves. And I also like to show you guys my references that I use. These are things that really inspire me or give me ideas for how to put the piece together or some different techniques to use. So as you can see, I went on Pinterest. Don't forget to follow me on Pinterest as well. You'll always get a little sneak peek at whatever I'm working on, because I will pin posts that I'm going to be using for inspiration or reference. So here I found a bunch of beautiful flower paintings, and this is the one that inspired me the most. So as you can see, they are drawing leaves first and then putting in the petals of these roses. So that's what we're going to be doing here, and we're going to start with some practice and some warm-up. I always like to do this when I'm painting. It's really difficult to just jump right into a piece. It's always better to practice a little bit. So here I'm getting my first couple of paints. I'm using just red and white, pure wet red and white. And the brand I'm using is Liquitex Basics. This is paint that I've had for honestly years and years and years, and it's a little more basic. It's not as high quality, but I don't want to waste it, so I'm going to use it until I run out, and then I'll get some nicer stuff. And it also just kind of goes to show that you really don't need the most high-end, fanciest products or supplies. You can really make beautiful art with anything that you already have. So we're starting with a couple of basic brush strokes. These are sort of staples of this type of one-stroke painting style, and I'm just getting my hand and my eye and my brain used to doing these strokes again. And here I'm going to practice a little cylinder shape, and let me zoom in a little bit. So this cylinder shape is sort of the center of each rose, and I wanted to start with that shape, make sure I could do it well, and then go in and sort of add some other leaves, other strokes, just to kind of, again, practice this technique. So this technique includes getting paint on both ends of your paintbrush, two different colors. And then if you can see here, I have sort of a plastic palette in my right hand, and I'm using that plastic palette as a way to mix the colors. And I'm not mixing them fully, mixing them a little bit. So you see a really nice ombre or gradient between the two colors. And you can see me really pressing onto that palette in order to get the paint on the brush. And it only takes a couple of strokes before you need new paint on your brush. So you see this little long break here is me getting more paint. And I actually switched paintbrushes. So before I was using a fully flat brush, and now this brush is a little bit angled. And I wanted to try out this brush and see if it was easier or more difficult to create these beautiful rose shapes. And it actually turned out to be more difficult. I had a harder time using and manipulating this angled brush in the exact way that I wanted to. So I'm really glad that I practiced it beforehand, before starting the final piece. And like I said, this kind of practice stage, for me at least, is a very important part of art, because I am a planner. So I like to know exactly what I'm doing before I start the final piece. And I'm realizing now that I'm looking back at this recording that the newspaper backdrop is really not very aesthetically pleasing. So my apologies for that. That's usually what I do when I'm painting, is I put newspaper down. I've done that my entire life, and I just truly didn't think about the fact that I would be recording and posting this for all of you to see. So please excuse that. I'm going to try and find something else. But you see me here going again, and I'm practicing painting the petals that are kind of on the underside or the bottom part of the rose. And in the first couple of practices, I felt like they really didn't look that good. The paint got a little bit messy. So I wanted to go in here and try it again and figure out the right way to angle my hand, the right way to press onto the page in order to keep the colors separate and for them to really look like individual petals. So I did figure it out a little bit here. It's really about the way that you put pressure onto the brush and onto the page. And it's difficult to explain here. It's better to figure it out actually in the moment in practice. You can kind of get a feel for how hard you push or what angle you hold your wrist. That is the right or not right way to put the paint down. So you can see here I'm doing a stroke and then I'm fully flipping the brush to the other side and using the paint that's on the other side of the brush and doing that while making sure that the white is on the outside and the red is on the inside. That's what's going to get those nice actual long petal shapes. And I feel like that was enough practice on the roses. So in just a second here, we are going to go in and start practicing the leaves. So here we go. I'm going to mix a new color for these leaves. I'm going to take green. Now this is just a pure basic green color, and then I'm going to take some yellow. And I thought that the green and yellow might look good together and give a little bit of a contrast to the red. And so for these leaf shapes, okay, I'm doing the same thing with the paint, getting a little color on the other side, and then mixing them on the plastic palette. And for these leaf shapes, I'm looking for a larger shape at the base, and then it kind of tapers together at the top. So the way to do that is to put a lot of pressure down onto the paintbrush when you're making that first initial push of the stroke, and then you turn your wrist so that the paintbrush is vertical and then lighten up at the end, and that's what's going to give you that wide base and then tapering top part. And after those first couple of leaves, I realized that I really did not enjoy the colors, especially the colors next to the pink and red rose. So I'm gonna go in now and do just green for the leaves. And what I'm doing is mixing the green and the black to create a darker green. And so this darker green is going to go in the middle, the more pure green is going to go on the outside, and that is going to add a little bit more depth and dimension to the leaves. So you can see here, I'm gonna do the same technique, but now this is just with different colors. So wide, lots of pressure at the base, and then lifting up towards the top. And I mean, you guys tell me what you think, but I definitely think that this looks better than the yellow and the green. And so I tried that a couple more times and realized I still wasn't super happy with the way that those colors were looking. So I wanted to switch it up a little bit. I went in with some yellow and mixed it with the dark green that we made. And this is going to kind of desaturate it a little bit, make it a little more gray. And so rather than using black or white, using yellow as sort of an adjacent color to green, it adds a little more, it desaturates it, but it adds a little something extra. And then I also added white in with the original green color to make it a little bit lighter. And so seeing these mixed together, I feel like that is what I was looking for. The color of the dark green isn't too dark, and the color of the regular green isn't too saturated, and it just has a little bit more of a natural look. And I say natural as in colors that you might actually find in nature. So I practiced the petals a couple of times on one of my practice roses, and I think that looks pretty good. So now with the practice done, it is time to start the actual piece. Ta-da! Just kidding. Okay, so this isn't the final piece. I actually ended up doing a full practice piece on paper before we move to our final medium, which will be wood. So we'll see that in a second, but I just wanted to show you here that doing this, again, doing the entire piece in a practice was really good because there were some mistakes that I made and some things I didn't like going through it this first time, so I really learned a lot from this. So for example, on the right side, there is too much white on that rose, and sort of on the bottom middle, you can see that the leaves and the stems get really jumbled together, and it's kind of hard to tell what's what. So doing this practice, noticing those things, was able to help me identify what I wanted to make sure I do or don't do in the actual final piece. And we're gonna go through that together in just a moment. Here, I'm gonna show you every single stroke that I put down, and then I'll explain again my thought process and what I was doing, what I was thinking as we go. So here, now we have a piece of wood. I just got this from Michael's. I got like a 5-pack a long time ago. And I've done another painting like this, a 1-stroke painting on wood, and it looks really pretty. So we're gonna keep going with that for this piece. I'm putting down 2 large circles of red. So these are going to map out where the 2 largest roses are going to go. And it's going to give me a starting point and help me plan the composition a little bit more, because I mean, with painting like this, once you've put the stroke down, you really can't pick it back up or change it or redo it, which is something that I enjoy about it, but it does make it a little bit tricky. So once we have this initial little planning stage down, we're gonna go in and do a couple of leaves first. And so the reason we're doing these leaves first is because they are going to be under the roses. So when you're painting, when you're drawing or coloring, you always wanna start with whatever is going to be at the back of the piece or whatever is furthest away from your eye. So I want these leaves to look like they are behind the roses. So we are going to do those first. And this is where planning the location of the 2 large roses really helps, because now I know where to put the leaves so that they will look like they are natural, and I can make sure that they won't be covered up by the roses either. And then I can also see in the larger piece where the leaves are going to go, kind of how everything is going to look. And I'm doing this exact same technique here, lots of pressure at the beginning and then lifting up towards the end. And sometimes the paint doesn't fully transfer from the brush to the canvas, so I did need to go over a couple of times with the paint, the same paint, and sort of deepen and saturate the paint onto the wood a little bit more. And now we're going to do one more leaf here so that it is not so symmetrical. Asymmetry is, to me, an important part of art. Unless you're going for full, complete, exact symmetry, it is always good to have a little bit of asymmetry there, because even though there are things in nature that are perfectly symmetrical, not always. Like, think about us as humans, our faces are not perfectly symmetrical. Most things in the world are not perfectly symmetrical, especially in nature where stuff is sometimes growing randomly. I don't know if that's quite the right word. But anyways, with a little bit of asymmetry there with the leaves, now we're gonna start on the actual rose. So I am starting with the backmost petals of this top rose, and I'm taking the white and the red, again putting them on either sides of this flat brush, mixing them on my clear palette here, and then making just sort of a subtle, gentle arch. And I'm doing a couple of these. I'm making sure that they overlap, and as the colors and paint start to blend, you kind of get a really nice effect of being able to see the white paint over top of the red, and that makes it look like there's a lot of depth. It makes it look like the top is lit up by, whatever light might be shining on these roses, and then it looks like it darkens towards the bottom where shadow would naturally be anyways. So I'm starting with the back, sort of building the petals up, making them a little smaller each time, And now we're gonna do that very central part of the rose, making a little cylinder shape. And once we've done that cylinder shape, now we're starting to layer the front part of the rose. And again, see how I'm turning, every time I do this, I'm turning the brush, so I'm using different sides of the bristles to lay this color down. And we're almost done here. I think I'm gonna do a couple more. Yes, so I felt like it looked a little empty at the bottom, and I wanted to go in with a couple more strokes just to kind of fill out the petals a little bit more. And I think that looks pretty good. So we're going to now go ahead and work on the second rose. And so what I'm gonna do is turn the entire canvas around, because I can really only paint at these specific angles, just the way that, I don't know if maybe this is just me, but the way that my brain works and the way that my hand works, I kind of have to learn how to put these strokes down one way, and then I can only do it that way. I can't like sort of turn around and paint the rose upside down, if that makes sense. So I turned the canvas around, and we're gonna draw this second rose, this is painting. We're going to paint this second rose in here now. And I've sped up the footage a little bit because we already know how to do it. It's just more about watching me put the paint down. So I think those roses look great. I'm super happy with how they turned out. And now we're gonna move on to the blooms. So the idea with these is that they look like roses that are kind of half open or starting to bloom. So you see me do a little one right there, and you can see I changed brushes here, so I'm using that more angled brush. And I thought that would work better for the blooms because they're not as large as the roses, and I want these petals to be a little softer. So I'm doing the cylinder here, and that back part of the cylinder is sort of the furthest thing away from the eye. And then by starting at the edges of these petals and kind of coming down and towards the middle, it makes it look like the petals are sort of wrapping around each other. And so you have that middle part and the petals wrapping around, just starting to open up. And again, I threw in 3 in here, so kind of 2 on each side, 1 on the other side. And again, that speaks to the asymmetry of it. And I'm really just eyeballing these and trying to see, using my intuition. I talked about this in the previous video, but there's like an artist's intuition where you just kind of have to trust that your mind and your body knows where things are supposed to go. So I only did 3 blooms there, and now we're moving on to the buds. So I'm using the angled brush again and doing just 2 very gentle, sort of softly circular strokes. And the light at the top and the dark at the bottom makes these look like little rose buds that are in various stages of opening and blooming. So again, thinking about nature, flowers don't all bloom in the exact same way at the exact same time. They take their time, they do things differently, they grow and develop differently. And so none of these buds look exactly like any of the other ones, and that's good. That makes it look more natural. It looks like they are each in their own stage of blossoming. And I put more buds here than even roses or blooms because they are smaller, and I'm sort of using them to fill out the space and to fill out the canvas. And so after that, I think we're just about almost done with the actual flowers here. I wanted to go in a little bit more onto these roses and sort of fill in the spaces where I thought they needed a little bit more lightness and a little more color. And so I'm drawing a couple of extra petals here, and I'm really glad that I did this because letting the paint dry a little bit and then going back over it with a new coat and a new layer really makes these ones that I just put down really sharp, makes them really stand out, and that's the look that I'm going for. So, I guess I'm putting down one more bud. Okay, well now I feel like the placement of all of these flowers and elements looks good, and now it's time to add some greenery. So I'm now going to go in with a very small round brush, and I'm doing these kind of half outlines of these buds and sort of placing some of the paint down, drawing it up, and then kind of flicking outwards a little bit at the end. So this kind of mimics the green. I think when roses bloom, they start as a little green ball on the top of a shoot or a stem. And then as the rose begins to open, the color of the rose, in this case the pink part, starts to emerge, and then the green part kind of falls away. And so what this is mimicking here is the green part kind of falling away. And even though these lines don't look exactly like parts of a plant, you're sort of telling the eye this is what this is. So you don't have to actually completely realistically represent it, but you are using the paint and specific shapes and specific lines to communicate the look that you're going for. So I'm coming here now on these blooms, and I'm doing a little bit more greenery, adding a little bit more detail. And this is me just basically sort of mimicking one of the references that I showed you in the very beginning. I really liked the way that they indicated the green on these blooms with just some extra little lines as if they are kind of transforming into leaves. And I don't know if this is obvious, but I don't have any sort of extensive, vast knowledge on how plants and roses and flowers develop and bloom and grow and blossom. I'm just more going off of what I've seen and what I think would look good on the canvas. So now here we have to take these blooms and these buds and ground them in the piece. And I'm doing that by adding these stems, and I'm having the stems just sort of come out from somewhere behind the roses. It doesn't have to be exact in any way. It's more what I think is going to look good. The direction, like I'm making sure that the stems don't both go in the same direction. I'm making sure they're going out in separate directions. I'm making sure that there is variation in the length of the stems, because that is overall more interesting to look at. So here I'm going in and adding a little bit more detail on the leaves. I'm adding a very thin line of a lighter green in the middle. This kind of, again, adds a little more depth. It kind of looks like the petals are sort of curving in towards the middle, but then the middle has a bit that is thicker. Like I think you know in leaves, the center of the leaf where it kind of grows out from is often a little thicker. So this sort of indicates that with just a simple light green line. And then now I'm coming in with the angled brush again and adding some smaller leaves to the buds and the blooms. And these smaller leaves add some more variation to the piece. So they echo the larger leaves. They're expected in this piece, but they add a little more detail and they add a little something extra, so it still looks like it belongs, but it is more for the eye to look at and enjoy. So we've got a couple more seconds here, and again, most of the footage that I'm showing you is sped up. This does take a long time. You have to be very slow and deliberate, and sometimes I'll sit there for maybe a minute or two just thinking about where I want to place something. Like I know I talked about your artist's intuition, you just feel where it needs to go. And yes, that's true, but it's not always that easy. It does take, especially with this kind of painting, it does take some very specific thought and deliberation. So I speed it up because it's easier to show you guys in a condensed form to get across all the information without being boring. And speaking of boring, we are going to liven up this piece now by adding some sparkle. I call it sparkle, but it's really just taking white paint and using these little dots to sort of add some highlights, sort of illuminate specific points of the piece, make certain things stand out, make it look like light is reflecting off of some of these petals in a specific way, or even maybe in this case that they are dewdrops sitting on the petals and the flowers reflecting the light. I like to add these little white dots to sort of anything that I do. You can see it in my previous video, which was a marker video, but I added little dots of white paint to that one because, I don't know, I just think it looks good. All right, and so the piece itself is done. Oh my gosh, did you see that? Did you guys see that? My brush just broke. It's an old brush. It's an old brush, so you know, it is what it is, but I was a little surprised there. Okay, anyway, so this is the final piece. This is the gloss varnish. And this is probably my favorite part. We're gonna take a second to enjoy it here. So I like to just pour the gloss straight on and then use the paintbrush to start to spread it around. And look at that. Look how much darker and deeper the wood color gets. Look at how vibrant the colors of the paint become. I love this. I think adding shine is beautiful, especially to pieces on wood like this. And adding that little gloss varnish just gives the whole thing so much more depth. And here it is, you guys. The painting is done. It looks amazing. I am so happy with how it turned out. Did you guys paint along with me? Tell me in the comments below how it went for you, or if you were inspired and you now want to try this. I mean, let me know. This is the first painting tutorial video that I've done. I've done one, well, no, that's a lie. I did a small series, but in this format of just a small one video showing the complete process. I really want your guys' feedback on what you think about the video. Do you like the pacing? Do you like how much I showed? Are there any points where it's boring and I can cut those out? Are there any points where you're saying to yourself, oh no, wait, I want more, like go into more detail on that. Let me see that slower. Let me see that closer. You guys tell me what you want to see. I really want to use this channel to put out beautiful pieces of art and also give you guys all of my best ideas and advice and instructions on how you can also learn and create this stuff for yourselves. So any sort of feedback helps. I'm going to be doing a painting every week, and no, that is wrong. I'm going to be doing one video each week, switching off between painting and marker drawings, at least for now. Those are the two mediums that I am super interested in and super passionate about. So if there's anything specific that you guys want to see drawn or painted, any kind of techniques that you're interested in, let me know. We can figure that out and explore it together. I really hope that you guys got something from this. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel before you go. Next week, we're going to be doing something special and spooky for Halloween. It is going to be a little art challenge, so I'm super excited for that. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you all go out and create something, and I hope you all are doing well. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.